In a game with nothing to gain and a lot to lose, the Orange floundered its way to a 60-55 victory over Pitt in front of a cute 7,000 fans at the Peterson's Event Center. We'll give you the good and the bad of that game as we grade the Orange on the road. And, of course, Joe previews the Orange's next game against Georgia Tech at the McIntosh Pavilion Wednesday, January 31st at 8. Let's go.
Make some noise, Orange fans. It's time for the Cuse Nation podcast with Sean and Joe. Give us a like on Facebook at facebook.com/Cuse Nation podcast.
All right, what's up, Cuse Nation? Thanks for tuning in to episode 54 of the Cuse Nation podcast with Sean and Joe. We can be found on any major platform or directory, including Podcast Addict, Player FM, pretty much everywhere. So if you could, please subscribe, whatever directory or platform you listen on. That would be much appreciated. And you can go back and in episode 53, I cut out the portion where we talked about the new criteria for the NCAA selection committee. I cut just an 8-minute segment out. If you didn't hear it and you don't feel like listening to the whole episode, you can go back. That's all cut by itself on every platform that we are available on. So I'm Sean alongside my good buddy Joe. I saw a quick stat I wanted to make everybody aware of that O'Shea Brissett has now. He's kind of lost it the past couple games, but he does have a possibility of reaching some of these guys on the list of SU freshmen with 100-plus free throw attempts. And you've got Carmelo Anthony at the top of that statistic, and he's got Melo was 168 for 238, and right now O'Shea Brissett, he's down towards the bottom, but he's 101 for 127, but he has the best free throw percentage at 79.5. So he's still got a ways to go. He was on pace for doing it, but he did not get to the line. O'Shea Brissett did not have the best game at Pitt. We'll get into that a little bit, but first, do some quick facts from Brent Axe that I saw. Pittsburgh has used, did you know that they've used 15 different starting lineups in 21 games this season? I mean, holy cow. Talk about trying to figure it out. Saturday marked the 113th meeting between Syracuse and Pittsburgh, and we hold that all-time series at 68-45. The Orange's 22 points were just one more than the season low 21, which came in losses to Kansas and Florida State. So that 22 points, that looked horrible at halftime. I was beside myself with that.
Yeah.
Pitt has lost 13 consecutive ACC regular season games. The Panthers' last ACC win was an 80-66 overtime decision over number 17 Florida back in February 2017. And Syracuse's win was just the third one in 15-year history at Peterson Event Center. That's it for that. So, all right, Joe, let's grade the Orange. Fortunately for Syracuse, Pittsburgh
is ugly a grade.
Well, yeah. Well, we'll get there, but lucky for Syracuse, Pittsburgh's awful.
Yeah,
you're not winning. You're not winning that game playing like that unless you're playing Pittsburgh. I mean, plain and simple. They shot 8 for 27 in the first half combined for both teams.
Yeah, it was ugly. Yeah, so
it was ugly, and we've talked before about how important it is to get to the line. They shot 19 for 26, is 73%, which is pretty good. The Panthers went 10 for 14. They didn't get as many foul shots, but those 19 points at the foul line, I believe it should have been more. Could have. I think we're better than that, but absolutely crucial to pulling off that win, especially going down the stretch.
Oh, yeah. It was bad. Let's just put it this way. I had to record it, so I was a little bit behind, probably half an hour behind, and it got to like 10 minutes left in the first half, and I just wanted to press live. That's how ugly that was. Yeah. I didn't even want to – I just wanted to just get to where we were, and I think I hope anyway, because this has happened 2 different times against Pittsburgh this year. But that it's just us playing down to our opponents. Again, you saw Boeheim even with Moyer being injured, he wasn't afraid to go right to his bench early, bring in Howard Washington and Sidibe again. So, again, I think it's a little bit of playing down to the competition, because both games against Pitt, they were just ugly like this, just grinded out, hard to watch. And at the end, obviously the one at home, we had a little bit better of a cushion near the end, and this one, it could have been a little bit better if we didn't have a couple, I don't know, a 3-pointer with a foul, some dumb stuff. I mean, Sidibe played great, but a couple times he went out but he fouled some 3-point shooters. So there were some dumb plays, especially at the end there. But either way, like I'll say it every single time, a win's a win, and just hope that this is just. I'm glad that a game like this from Howard and Brissett came against Pittsburgh. Yeah. And not somebody where it would have, because they play like this against, just Georgia Tech probably, our next game, and it's not going to be pretty. So,
yeah, exactly what you said. When you're watching the game and you just want to press live because it's so ugly. O'Shea Brissett, he was 1 for 12 before about 8.5 minutes left in the game, when Syracuse finally decided to put some distance between them and the Panthers. They went on a 7-0 run, and courtesy of a pass from Merrick to Brissett, and he finally hit one of his 3-pointers. And that was pretty much it. I don't think the Panthers, after that 8.5 minute mark or so, they never got within 4 points again. But how many times did they get within 4 points? I mean, they were in the game all the way until pretty much to the end of the game.
Yeah.
And I feel like they should have just been able to put them away early, and it was very reminiscent of the game at home. Low scoring, just a mess. It was sloppy. Again, I feel like the refs let them play a little bit more than normal, which you mentioned last time, causes a sloppy game in itself. So, Joe,
but it's funny though, because there wasn't nearly as many turnovers as the last game either. So,
well, that's true. Our 11 to their 9, in points off of turnovers wasn't even. I mean, it wasn't even a factor. I don't even think.
No,
I think it
was like 4 or 5 that we. I think we had 5.
6. I think it was
2.
6 for us.
And they had 2, something like that.
Yeah, because no one could hit.
Yeah, we out-rebounded them 48-42. They had more offensive rebounds than us, but either way, I mean, this year we're 15-3 when we out-rebound opponents, 0-3 when we don't. So usually when we get that stat, it's a good sign for us. But again, just looking at these shooting numbers, they're just ugly.
They're just ugly.
So,
35%, 19 of 54. Thank God they shot at 27%, 18 for 65. I guess here's my question, Joe. What is it about Pitt that has given Syracuse such fits in both games this year, and with a team that's they're not that good? Let's be honest. Pitt sucks. They suck.
No, I think it's one of those things where anybody, if we have a bad shooting day like this, or a team decides that they're going to come out and play an energized defense, then they can hold us to enough points to keep them in the game. Especially a game on the road like that. It did look like the crowd was into it, even though their team's not doing that well. I mean, you saw the crowd and the students give a pretty good effort to try to beat an old Big East foe. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just the fact that it's a rivalry, and rivalries are never easy, no matter the record. But this year it was sloppy, and I'm just glad that we got the 2 wins out of it, because either one of these losses would have been bad.
And I completely agree, Joe. So I guess here it is. What grade do you give them? I'll tell you what. I gave them a C. Okay, if this game is at home, even though they won, I give them a C minus. But because they're on the road, I bump them up to a C. If it weren't for Sidibe, first of all, they wouldn't have won the game. I don't think they would have won the game with Chukwu in there. Because for whatever reason, he's not been able to handle Pittsburgh. When we played at home, Sidibe, if you remember right, that was his Butterfinger game. He could not hold on to the ball. So I gave him a C. Brissett shooting 25%. I thought the rebounds, I thought we should have, we handled it. We won the battle, but we should have had more offensive rebounds, especially with that many misses. It was like one and done a lot of times. It's just very frustrating. They're lucky to get a C, but I think that's fair with a win on the road. What about you?
I'll probably go C- just because of how bad Pittsburgh is and the fact that this is, and a little bit has to do with the first game as well and how they played, but it just seems like both times they've came out uninterested against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, totally.
Like they're that much better than them, and this team's not good enough to do that. So they can't shoot like that. They can't come out and play with that type of low energy like that. I mean, with the game Chukwu just had, he should have been able to dominate and then to see what Sidibe did, and it's like, why didn't Chukwu do that when he just had the game that he had? So I'm glad that Sidibe came in and proved to Boeheim that his knees are good and that he can still contribute to this team, and was glad to see and hopefully puts a little bit of pressure on Chukwu, or if not, gives us two options down low so we can play a little bit more aggressive down there, and it'll definitely help on the offensive end. So Sidibe, without a doubt, like we said, player of the game, and C- just because they should have handled it a little bit better. So they just still came out and uninterested, and I don't like that.
I don't like it either. And both big men coming off of both of their best performances of the year, and I think Sidibe takes it for the better of the two. The good thing is, and we talked about this last night, the good thing is that these two aren't going anywhere, and they're only going to get better. And Sidibe, I think, the only thing that he really, really, really needs to do in the offseason, he needs to gain some weight.
Yeah,
and he needs to put some weight on, and he will be a force if he can.
Well, yeah, and this, I mean, actually, this turns into the only real hot hand situation that we have now, because before it was Moyer and Dolce, and I mean, Howard Washington isn't going to come in and blow the socks off to start over Howard or Battle, but I mean, here, this gives, I mean, I doubt Sidibe will start, but this gives incentive for Chukwu in the beginning of the game, because he can start the game, and if he comes out a little slow or he's not aggressive and he has problems, Boeheim's going to have no problem putting Sidibe in there now. And if Sidibe plays good like this past weekend, then Pascal might not see the court again. So,
yeah, just real quick for Sidibe, 18 points, it's awesome. 16 rebounds, it's great, and he also had 3 blocks.
Right.
So, and
coming off of not really playing, know what I mean?
Yeah, and he was 6 from 8 from the line too. So, yeah. I mean, I'm fine with 6 for 8. I'm good with that.
Yes, and I also like the confidence that Dolce is coming in on. He's not blowing the socks off numbers, but I mean, he had a good game last game. We both picked him as our player of the game, and as he gains more confidence, I think that he's going to be a lot better, especially in the offensive end. When he filled the stat sheet, 7 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks. I mean, if he keeps gaining confidence and playing better and gaining more experience, but regardless of his size, and there's a lot of players on this team that need to put on weight, but it's going to be hard for Matthew Moyer, hard pressed for him to get his job back when he gets healthy, whenever he gets healthy. Yeah,
I believe the chant was towards Mark, he's a noodle.
Yeah.
Well, whatever. And then he goes and stuffs that dude. He totally on a dunk, which is just gratifying as hell. So, real quick, here's what Coach had to say.
Barama was tremendous. He's been getting better in practice, healthier. He had his best practice of the year this week. I didn't anticipate him playing that much, but Pascal was not involved in the game at all. He wasn't doing what he's been doing, catching, going up strong. He was looking. But Barama was tremendous. I still think if he had been healthy all year, he could do this on a regular basis. He's a very good player down there. He gets a little overexcited. He fouled the guys on a three-point shot at the end, but he tries to make plays. I thought he was tremendous. He was the difference in the game.
Absolutely. I mean, everything he just said is just on point. I mean, he is the coach, but I wouldn't have pulled it if I didn't love it so much. So great for Sidibe. Hopefully he can start to get over the health issues. He looked great. Hopefully he can continue that. Another guy that was kind of disappointing yesterday was Frank Howard, and like you mentioned, if he's going to have one of these games, best to be against Pittsburgh. Averaging 15.7 points a game. He ended up with, let's see, what did he have, Howard? 6. So
yeah, he had a bad game.
Yeah, he had a terrible game. He was 37.5% from behind the arc. He went 0 for 4. 5.5 assists per game, which, is neither here nor there, I guess. But just, sluggish. The whole beginning of the game, the whole first half, first 3 quarters of the game was sluggish. So, And like Coach said, he was the difference. The DB was the difference in the game. So, Joe, any final thoughts on Pitt?
No, I'm just glad that
it's over.
It's over, and I don't know. If it comes to a situation where you might have to play them, I mean, I hope not. But if we have to play them again in the ACC tournament, it would be. I'd hope so, just probably because they're going to be ranked last, so that we'll be up there, and it's most likely going to be our easiest game. But I probably won't watch it. So. Just because how boring it is.
Yeah, it's awful. It's painful.
Because I'd be willing to guess that if we played a third time, it would be pretty much right around the same. We'd be in the low 60s, they'd be in the low 50s, and it would be boring as hell.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, Pitt is done, hopefully, until next year. That's all we have to say about that. All right, Joe. We are headed to Georgia Tech, Wednesday, January 31st at 8 p.m. Start time into McIntosh Pavilion. Joe, what do we need to look forward to headed to Georgia Tech?
Well, a lot can be said after tonight. They have a game tonight against Clemson, so again, we'll have at least one extra day, although they are home, so they're not going to have to travel at all. Georgia Tech's a weird team because they started out the year okay in the beginning. They had a loss against UCLA, then won, I think, their first 4. But then they went on a real bad losing streak, and they lost some games they probably shouldn't have lost to. Just recently, they went through a little streak of beating Miami and Notre Dame and Pittsburgh in the ACC, and then they actually have lost their last 3. They're good opponents, but they lost to Virginia, at North Carolina, and at Florida State. So it'll be interesting to see what they have for Clemson. They're currently, the record this year is 10-10, and they're 3-4 in the ACC. And again, I like their coach, and the roster isn't awful. They got a couple guys. Ben Lammers is their main guy. There's big talk about him being maybe an All-American, All-ACC type guy. He's, I guess, been slowed a little bit this year, but they got some guys that'll definitely fill it up. They got 4 guys that average over 10 points a game. Tadrick Jackson, a guard. Jose Alvarado is a guard, and Josh Okogie, another guard. So they're going to have 3 guards set with Ben Lammers, 6'10" center, and then another forward out there, I think Gouye. But again, it's just you don't really know what to expect because of how they played. They're just up and down. And again, like I said, they've been playing better recently. But a 16-point loss to Virginia, a 14-point loss to North Carolina, 11-point loss to Florida State. Ken Pomeroy has us ranked around 43, and they have Georgia Tech around 112. And also, looking at the real-time RPI today, Georgia Tech's RPI is at 140. So this would actually constitute as a quadrant 3 game, which means that it's a little bit more important than possibly maybe what it would be if they would have had a couple early wins, and Georgia Tech was probably where they thought they were going to be. But right now, not to say that it can change, but right now, because the mark for a quadrant 3 away game is it's got to be over 135.
Right, they're probably not going to move that much in one game. So
yeah, they're at 140, and if Georgia Tech ends up making that up and ended up in the 130s, 120s, then that would turn into a quadrant 2 loss. But for right now, it is a quadrant 3 game, and it would be a quadrant 3 loss, which is one that we do not have yet this year. So it's an important game.
Just like with Pitt, not a whole lot to gain, but a little more to lose. if we don't pull it off. And it would be
Right.
they're beatable. They're decent, but they're beatable. Like you said, it's kind of a mixed bag. Lammers is familiar. I mean, he's been around.
Yeah, and he can make that jumper at the free throw line. So there's definitely something to be scared about with that, and he is a good player. So
yeah. All right. Well.
but I mean, even looking at their schedule, lost to Grambling, a loss at Wofford, a loss to Wright State. I mean, you turn those 3 games around, which this team normally would. You're talking about a 13-7 team. Who knows what to do with Clemson, and it's a different ball game. That would have changed the RPI. So I don't know exactly what was going on. I would probably be willing to guess that there was some internal stuff going on, whether it was injuries or not, because Georgia Tech is not that bad. And again, they've turned it around a little bit here this past month. So again, their RPI could. I mean, it's gonna rise just by the teams that they play in the ACC, regardless. But
right.
I think like I talked about before the first Pitt game, that this is a nice little 4-game stretch where we could have went from 12-6 to 16-6, and we're 3 games through. So
yeah, we've leveled off. We've reached the 500 mark inside the ACC.
Yep.
So, a couple more of these. Got Virginia coming into the dome.
Got a quadrant 1 game coming through. I mean, Virginia just beat Duke on Saturday. So
yeah, and that was a bad day for home teams in the ACC. The first 4 games of the day Saturday, all the home teams lost.
Oh, yeah. I got a coworker that
NC State fan?
No, North Carolina.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, him and 3 friends. It's like $500 seats, parking passes. Yeah.
I had a buddy.
He's going to be pretty upset. I'm sure he had a great time.
A buddy of mine in Virginia Beach is a UNC fan, and him and his son, they went there, made a weekend out of it. It was a part of a Christmas present,
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
And NC State,
that was a heartbreaker in overtime, too.
I'll tell you what, NC State is...
They can shoot the ball.
I've been looking at them in Ken Pom and RPI and stuff, and their numbers aren't bad. So
yeah,
they can be a dangerous team. They're just not consistent. But another thing I was looking at too, Wake Forest. They had a bad loss the other day.
It was 30 points. I was flipping between that game and there was another game, Virginia Tech.
Yeah, Virginia Tech got a win yesterday.
Yeah, that was a closer game. I was on that game. At last I looked, Wake Forest was down by 30 points to Louisville at Louisville.
Was that where they were playing?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, 96-77. Ooh.
Yeah, there you go.
Ooh.
29 points.
Yeah. Let's see. Florida State beat Miami 103-94 in overtime. Virginia Tech beat Notre Dame. So, yeah, ACC up and down. But that Wake Forest game, when I saw that score, actually, it kind of got me a little worried because I started thinking about what they've been doing lately. And I went and looked at, again, when I was looking up Georgia Tech's real-time RPI, and I was looking at the quadrant, the numbers that we were talking about. And that's what I figured out, that, 136 to 2 something as far as away games, the RPI is the quadrant 3 game. And I looked, in Wake Forest, they're 126 right now. So if they drop to past farther than 135 into the 136 and beyond range, then that's going to end up turning into a quadrant 3 loss, which is something that we don't have yet.
Yeah, and something we don't need.
No, something we don't need either. So as Syracuse fans out there, I might live in a town called Wake Forest, but I'm no homer here. I think we just need to.
we gotta root.
Well, yeah, we have another game against them too, so we have another, we have another time to right that wrong. But looking at this team, 8-13, and they don't look. I mean, they look worse than Georgia Tech, and a couple more games here, and you're gonna start wondering how we even lost that game. So I'm hoping that I'm gonna be a Wake Forest fan for the rest of the year, and just hope that RPI doesn't drop us to get that loss, because I think even with Georgia, if we were to happen to fall to Georgia Tech next weekend, who's to say that win by them would push them past that mark to turn it into a quadrant 2 loss anyway? So Georgia Tech, we got to get that W. Wake Forest, we got to kind of watch and hope that they don't fall, and maybe they can get a couple wins to keep them above that threshold. Just, keep away any type of blemish that could be used against us come tournament time. So,
yeah, that could be brutal. We got to go in there. We got to take Georgia Tech at least.
Right, or we can win enough games to where our record is good enough and it doesn't matter. So,
right, that's the situation though where you got to take one of them. You got to take one of them because they're both going to be considered, borderline bad losses being in the quadrant 3. And that's what's crazy about the quadrants is that they're, like we mentioned in the segment we talked about, it's like a living, breathing thing. It's constantly changing. And
it's liquid.
Yeah, man. So, all right, well. Syracuse will play Wednesday night. We'll get back here to do the wrap-up of the Georgia Tech game, and then Syracuse plays Virginia at the Dome on Saturday. They're on fire, but they've struggled in the Dome. But they didn't struggle at Cameron Indoor, did they?
No. I mean, they struggled. They struggled against us recently, and we talked about them having all the incentive in the world to kind of whoop up on us at Georgia earlier or at Virginia earlier in the year. So, we'll wait and see. Just hope to get through this one first. And I think no matter what happens on Wednesday, I think we'll be ready for Virginia on Saturday. So, sorry I didn't have too much. I haven't really watched too much of Georgia Tech this year. So I know some familiar names, and I know, looking at their schedule that they've been playing a little bit better. But for anybody who wants to check them out, they play Clemson tonight, so you can get a first-hand look, get your own little scouting report for Georgia Tech on Wednesday. So
be a great upset
tonight
if they could do
6.
it. Well, go Georgia Tech tonight. I can get behind that. It's that time of year where you got to start getting behind some of the teams you just don't like.
Who's to say that if they beat Clemson that they go up enough in the RPI to be a quadrant 2 loss? They could get pushed up to a quadrant 2 team or a quadrant 2 game, I should say, on Wednesday just by them winning tonight possibly.
Yeah.
So like you said, that's what's exciting about it. It's always moving. So cheer for our resume. You can always do that. So that's why I say if you're an SU fan, cheer for Georgia Tech, cheer for Wake Forest, get those upsets.
Yeah, without a doubt. All right, Joe. That is it for episode 54. Thanks for tuning in. If you could be like Marty, be like Rosemary, be like Bubba, be like all the others on the Cuse Nation podcast. It's facebook.com/Cuse Nation podcast. So that's it. We'll come back after Georgia Tech. For Joe, I'm Sean. We're out.
You just heard the Cuse Nation podcast with Sean and Joe.